Welcome to this explainer. Let's jump right in. Today, we're breaking down the exact mathematical formulas and the pretty strict disclosure rules that define workplace safety in the fuel cell and industrial battery sector. We're looking specifically at the sustainability standards developed by SASB, which is now part of the IFRS Foundation. So if you've ever wondered how major industrial manufacturers actually quantify the safety of their factory floors and, how they hold themselves accountable for invisible long-term health risks, you are absolutely in the right place. Here's our roadmap for today. We've got decoding workplace safety metrics, the TRIR math explained, direct versus contract employees, managing chronic health exposures, and finally, blood levels and compliance. Let's get to it. Starting with Section 1, Decoding Workplace Safety Metrics. Now, I want to start by asking you this. Why does the SASB framework require companies to multiply their safety incidents by exactly 200,000? At first glance, it kind of seems like an arbitrary, massive number, just pulled out of thin air, right? But it's actually the key to standardizing this data globally. That magic number, 200,000, is literally the foundation of the reporting metric. It creates a universal scale for measuring how safe a facility really is. And that's crucial, whether we're talking about a massive gigafactory with thousands of workers or just a highly specialized regional plant. So here is the logic behind the math, and it's actually pretty brilliant. 200,000 represents the exact total number of hours that 100 full-time employees work in a standard year. Think about it. That's 100 workers multiplied by a 40-hour work week multiplied by 50 weeks a year. By using this standardized block of hours as a baseline, we essentially strip away the size of the company. It allows investors and regulators to compare the safety performance of a massive multinational corporation fairly and directly against a smaller local manufacturer. Moving on to Section 2, the TRIR math explained. Okay, so first we identify our numerator. This is the statistic count, which is the total number of work-related incidents during the year. But to be clear, it's not just every little scraped knee. Under the standard, an incident is recordable if it results in death, days away from work, restricted work, a job transfer, loss of consciousness, or medical treatment that goes beyond basic first aid. Oh, and it also includes any significant injury or illness diagnosed by a licensed healthcare professional. Next, we take that precise statistic count and we multiply it by our standardized base of 200,000 hours. Basically, by multiplying the raw number of incidents by that 100 worker equivalent we just talked about, we're scaling the company's specific incident count up or down to fit our universal measuring stick. Finally, we divide that number by the actual total number of hours worked by all employees in the reported year. This final calculation gives us the Total Recordable Incident Rate, or TIR for short. And if we're specifically counting deaths, this is how we get the fatality rate. What you're left with is a clean, totally comparable rate that tells you exactly how many recordable incidents occurred for every 100 workers on the floor. It's mathematically elegant, and honestly, it's incredibly revealing about a company's true safety culture. Which brings us to Section 3, Direct versus Contract Employees. Now, SASB explicitly requires companies to calculate and disclose these TRIR and fatality rates separately for two distinct groups. First up, direct employees. This is anyone on the company's actual payroll, regardless of whether they're full-time, part-time, seasonal, or salaried. And second, contract employees. These are folks who aren't on the direct payroll, but whom the company supervises or manages, like independent contractors or temp workers. By forcing companies to report both, the standard proves that corporate responsibility extends to absolutely everyone on the floor. You can't just artificially lower your safety incident rates by offloading the dangerous tasks to temporary workers. If you supervise them, their safety is part of your public record. All right, Section 4. Managing chronic health exposures. Because safety isn't just about sudden accidents, right? We also have to manage invisible long-term threats. Manufacturing these critical energy technologies requires handling some pretty hazardous materials. Companies have to explicitly describe their efforts to assess, monitor, and reduce worker exposure to heavy hitters like solvents, corrosives, lead, arsenic, cadmium, and sulfuric acid. They also have to account for known carcinogens and mutagens. So this isn't just about handing out safety gloves. It's about deeply analyzing and disclosing exactly how a company protects the human beings working with toxic chemistry day in and day out. As these SASB standards mandate, a company's management approach has to thoroughly address two different timeframes of risk. First, you've got short-term or acute risks. Think chemical explosions, electrocution, or freeze burns. Second, and often way more difficult to manage, are the long-term or chronic risks from continuous exposure. Disclosures need to detail strategies here, like participating in long-term health studies, deploying advanced technology to control exposure, automating dangerous processes to remove humans from the hazard entirely, or actively phasing out and substituting these hazardous materials for safer alternatives. And that leads us to Section 5, blood lead levels and compliance. This brings us to a highly specific, absolutely crucial area of health monitoring for industrial battery manufacturers: lead exposure. Because lead is just so fundamental to certain industrial batteries, the standard requires really detailed risk monitoring policies. This is primarily done through monitoring workforce blood lead levels, or BLL. The company actually has to disclose exactly how they track lead concentration in the physical bloodstream of their workers. And this isn't just left up to internal guesswork. Companies must publicly disclose how their internal BLL policies map to, or hopefully exceed, the stringent safety guidelines set by regulatory giants like OSHA and the ACGIH. They need to explain what their maximum thresholds are, exactly how often they're testing their workers' blood, and whether their own internal policies are actually more rigorous than the bare minimum required by law. Ultimately, the disclosure process follows these critical steps. First, establish and clearly state the BLL thresholds and testing frequencies. Second, since these entities operate globally, they have to explain how their policies adapt to different regulatory requirements across various geographic locations. And third, and this is where the real transparency kicks in, they have to discuss their actual performance. This means transparently disclosing any legal fines, regulatory settlements, or instances of noncompliance. By detailing these specific steps, organizations paint a crystal-clear, data-driven picture of their true operational risk profile. Which leaves us with this final thought to consider. When companies report these complex metrics, from that 200,000-hour TIR math to rigorous blood level monitoring, is it merely an exercise in corporate compliance, or does this math actually reflect a fundamental, structural commitment to keeping every single worker safe? The data's all there in the disclosures. It's up to us to do the math.